I'm excited about today's podcast. It is a theme that seems to thread through everything Jewish, and a theme that is particularly relevant to parents, children, and young children. Our topic is peace. And one of our guests, the dad on the podcast, the youngest dad on the podcast, when I told him about the theme, he said, "What's that?" And I think that is the perfect framework for us to bring these themes together. So let me say hi to my co-host. Hello, Rabbi Steinhardt.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Lauren and Adiel. Nice to see you guys.
And
Nice to
how's
be on
your
a
peace?
podcast with people with as a history. How's my peace?
Yeah, how's your peace this week?
Not sure I'm not exactly sure about the question. Is it how's your equanimity, which is a little bit different than your peace? And I would suggest that your equanimity is your capacity to balance, that desire for peace with the realities of the struggles of life all the time in your families, in your jobs, whatever it is that you're doing. So my peace is good. I'm in a what they say in Hebrew, Benoni place. I'm right in the middle right now.
Lovely, lovely. Well, that's a good place for us to start, and we will try not to disrupt anyone's peace too badly today. But let me introduce the other guests. We have extraordinarily special guests to us. Morah Lenes is here. For those of you that are on YouTube, you can see that shining face. She will be leading the Ahava Shabbat music this year, and it happens to be that our Friday Shabbat Ahava is on peace. So it was a special time for us to welcome her to the podcast. She is also a cantorio soloist and has been a teacher of so many, from babies to adults, to help them to connect to Judaism and Jewish community. So Laura, how's your peace?
Oh, how is my peace? I love how Rabbi began, because I think really it depends on each moment and which hat you're wearing, because I think each one of us have so many different parts of our lives that we juggle. And when I think about peace, I really, for me, it's about finding the place in self where I can ground, and no matter what is happening, I can just sort of place my feet down and be able to be with what is in that moment.
Beautiful.
In this moment, I'm juggling motherhood and beautiful opportunities with prayer and community and B'nai Torah, and I'm in rabbinic school, and so all the different moving parts. My daughter is having a bat mitzvah in 2 weeks, so yeah, it's just journeying
That's
along.
a good peace disruption, but it keeps you out of the balance that Rabbi described, for sure. So I love it. And how we define peace is going to be maybe part of what we discuss today. But our other guest here is Adiel Hoch. And I am so excited because I knew I needed a young parent, someone to keep us real here. And when I told him the topic was peace, he said, "What's that?" And Adiel is the dad of a toddler, an energetic, busy, curious boy, and expecting his second child in just a few weeks. So Adiel, welcome. And how's your peace?
It's peaceful at the moment, but that's
I know, we
subject
just
to
put on the
change.
headset and hide from the world.
That's subject to change by the milliseconds. So, but I think, I also agree with what Rabbi Steinhardt said, and it's I mean, I don't want to say too much now before we get into the conversation, but I think for those that don't have young children, we just live in a world full of distractions, and it's just so tough to sort of maintain that balance. And but I don't want to get too deep into it yet.
Okay.
Unless you want me to.
I'm ready to jump in, but Rabbi, do you want to jump in?
I'm ready to jump also. I have a
Go for it.
Interesting thoughts from the Jewish tradition. But before that, I was performing a wedding last week. And at the end of the wedding ceremony, we break a glass. Everybody knows that. And when we break a glass, there's a number of different meanings given to the breaking of the glass. But certainly one of the ideas about breaking the glass is that the wedding ceremony for a couple who's in love, romantically involved with all sorts of incredible hopes for the future is a time that feels like it's like the ultimate, in happiness and feeling at one and all of that. And then you break a glass and there's broken glass on the ground. And so I think it comes amongst the many meanings, it comes as a reminder to say, you're going to break glasses. It's not always going to be smooth sailing, guys. It's going to be hard at times. And your life, the success of your relationship, the success in life is much more dependent on how you deal with, the meal when you break the glass than when the glass is full and you're drinking the wine. So that you struggle. I don't want to sound like Scroogey here. I don't want to sound negative, but where I'm at in life, what I realize, and as I look back at my life and look ahead to what's in the future, struggle's built into life. And so when you struggle, you feel discordant. You don't feel like have so much peace. It's just built into it. So the question is then, how do you live your life that way? And how do you, so let me and then I'll give this up for a second. We're never commanded or told that we will have peace. What we're commanded in our tradition is to pursue peace. That is, to be in the process of looking for a peaceful resolution, a peaceful settlement, a peaceful place. And I'm talking internationally, and I'm also talking interpersonally. And that is what we want to do, is always work towards finding that peace, that wholeness. But know that it's never ultimately achieved. It's only penultimately achieved.
Well, both Rabbi and Morah responded to that opening question with, it's almost a process reaction, is how do I surf these waves so that I have equanimity as I'm surfing? And so I know that young children are disruptors. I know that there will be chaos. I know that they are brought to us, grown-ups, to shock us out of that complacency. And so I don't think that peace, as Rabbi was talking, I'm thinking, well, is peace harmony? Of course, we want harmony in the world and in our families, but those are only momentary states. It's like happiness isn't something that's persistent. It comes and goes, and we look for it and we hold it when we feel it. But back to Adiel, I mean, what do you think peace is if you were to have it with a toddler? I mean, because, is peace watching a baby sleeping?
Yeah.
Is peace, the giggles in a bath time? It's peace isn't just quiet when silent. Not to me anyway. So Adiel, what peace do you long for, and what peace is already there?
I think, I sort of think of the concept of peace and, happiness sort of interchangeably. I guess when you're happy, you're at peace. For me, it can get hectic, and it feels like it's always, no matter what's happening, it's like a constant pursuit of finding that equilibrium and sort of constantly readjusting based on what situation you find yourself in or where you might be or whatever it is. And to me, it's really making sure that the people that are around me and the people that I love and care about, namely my wife and my son, are happy and fed, which plays into the happiness part. And for me, there's nothing greater than getting to watch my son experience new things and see new things and see the excitement on his face. And, so that's one form of peace. I also find peace, I think there's a lot of parents that, whether they admit it or not, sort of look forward to the evening and getting, at least I've heard moms say it. I don't know if it's tongue in cheek, but it's like, oh, I can't wait till I get my kid in bed tonight, because then I can relax and do whatever I want. And I actually sort of sometimes get a little sad when it comes time for bedtime, because I do love hanging out with Jasper so much. And he's just such a fun kid to be around. And I wish he could just stay up as late as he wanted to, but that's just not realistic with an 18-month-old, my wife tells me. But there's another form of peace, which is after he's gone to bed and I have time to really sit and it's quiet and nobody's calling me, and I can really think about what I'm doing in my life and in business. And so that's like a totally different type of peace, I think, which is just unencumbered time to just think about. I mean, I like to be by myself and think about all the things that I'm experiencing and going through in life and how I'm going to tackle certain things and strategize and this and that, and thinking about him as well. And so there's that form of peace as well. So it's kind of all over the place, but I think that really for me, it's just trying to just maintain, keep everybody happy throughout the day and the night. And when situations arise, to try to find the best way to sort of mitigate them so we can get back to that sort of equilibrium baseline as quickly as possible where everybody's happy again.
So what I believe, and then I would like to hear Laura as a parent and the juggler and someone who has the philosophical and component, but it's like that old idea of peace within, where and I hear you in that, having that time to yourself, time to reflect, time, just that inner moment to ground yourself in where you are and your hopes, your dreams, and solutions to problems. And I've also seen you, Adiel, when Jasper was a little younger, and when that baby is growing and they're so out of their own sorts because they're in that growth spurt. And I saw your heartbreak at, like, I can't make them happy. Like, I can't take away the frustration. I can't smooth this over. And then you think of a whole family. So there's this peace within, and that there's like, but I can only be happy or peaceful when I know the people I love and care about are okay. And children go through not okay moments pretty regularly in a day. And then, of course, you have mom, your partner, to try to make sure that her needs are met. So that's a struggle, because that peace within and peace around, and that your peace is absolutely contingent on other people's peace. Rabbi, help. And then I want to ask Laura sort of that same, of that inner versus outer.
In some ways, we're all talking about different things, both to each other and within ourselves, in terms of where peace resides. Is peace calm? Calmness is peace, happiness. How do you find peace in a relationship? And knowing that it's never perfect. The word for peace in Hebrew, shalom, is related to the word for shleimut, which means wholeness. And if you have wholeness, then it's not just all good, it's good and bad, but we're able to coexist with the good and the bad. So everybody knows, like, perhaps one of the most famous prayers in the Jewish tradition, says Shalom b'mromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. I want to tell you an interesting reading that I've seen about it. It says, may the one who creates peace in the high heavens, may he grant us peace for ourselves and for all of Israel. And we say amen. And so what does it mean to have peace in the high heavens? That's the question. What's peace in the high heavens? And according to this commentator, she wrote, the heavens are filled with heavenly bodies, stars and moons and planets. And nothing is still. Everything is moving in its course. Everything has its own rotation and revolution, etc. But peace in the heavens means that all these heavenly bodies can move and they don't crash into each other. So that we're all on a particular path, and we have to find that path and move on that path. And yet we also have to give room for the other to be on their paths also.
Well, that's pretty perfect.
Yeah, but none of it, I'm not comfortable with it. I like it. No, I like it a lot, but I'm not comfortable with it in relation to Adiel, because of, when I think about having little children. So when I think about spending time with my grandchildren or when my kids were really little, because you're constantly on watch. You're consistently looking out for danger. You know, you're continuously making sure that they ate right and that they get enough sleep and that they're clean and their diapers are changed or whatever. And so when you're always on watch, it doesn't feel like you're not experiencing peace. It may be, Adi, that you've just got to give it up for a few years. And now
Give
you
up
have
the
a
peace.
second, give up the aspiration. No, look at the aspiration down the road. You know, like in order to achieve that peace when you're older, you got to do this hard work now.
But I
And
want to say,
we're talking about personal peace. We haven't even
right,
begun to talk about
but
the macro level, which
right.
is world peace, and it's just
And
daunting to
Jasper's
even think
future,
about it.
I
Yeah.
mean, because we
Jasper's
won't
future,
get that to
but
that. Yeah,
everybody's future, and
everybody's future.
nation against nation, and all the things that are going on. But let's
We'll put that here for now.
we can't solve
Because
all
what I
that
want to
today.
just say as the non-parent here, I hear you and I know that how hard it is and that vigilance. However, when else in your lives do you have the opportunity to go back into that present moment and be playful and giggle and or even just hold? I mean, sometimes peace is comforting a child that you can only comfort. So I also believe that there's an opportunity for peace, but when with young children and maybe teenagers, we'll get there, but it's not. But I have to let go of all my adult requirements and needs and responsibilities for short periods. So I think you get a bonus by being parents, or for any of us that have the joy of being around children. So I don't think he has to give it up completely
It's
or
funny you
put it on
say
hiatus.
that. It's funny you say that because I sort of do this exercise with myself somewhat regularly, and I don't. It's sort of an exercise that I started doing when life got hard in the past. It's not like in response to particularly in response to the trials and tribulations of raising a young child, but I realize, I'll be out walking and my neighbor who has teenagers and kids in college, and they're like, oh, you know, we remember when I remember when my son was, a year and a half old, 2 years old, and it goes so fast. And I really try to internalize and think about that a lot. And I try to sort of put myself in the position that I, God willing, will be in or think I'll be in 10 or 20 years. And I'm a very deep thinker and highly analytical, and I don't necessarily say all the things that I'm thinking all the time. So, but I try to really think about how I might feel in 10 or 20 years, and how there are things that I'm going to miss, even things that may not seem enjoyable now. They just sort of come with the territory, and it's all one thing. And I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, that was just such an unbelievable time, and it's the only time I'm going to really have in my life. I mean, look,
Yeah.
most people don't continue to have kids, for many, many decades. So most people have their kids within a time frame of 1 or 2, 2 decades. That might be pushing it. And it's like it all comes at you really fast at one time, especially if you have within a few years of each other. And as stressful as it is, I feel like what's going to happen is that, like, all of a sudden I'm going to be out of this craziness in a matter of 5 or 10 years. I'm going to, I don't want to say miss it, because there'll be different great things happening then, but it's going to be like, wow, like that was something that I'll never get back or be able to do again. And I'm really trying to think about how I'll feel then, and think about that now, to really try to like maximize this time and this opportunity, I guess you could say, that I have right now with him, and hope, God willing, his sister, and you know
Adiel, as a father who's like a generation ahead of you, I really appreciate what you're saying there. But I also will tell you that there are other stages in that relationship which have an extraordinary amount of fulfillment, and you have to get through this period in order to get to those places. So wait until, you know, your son is your age, and then you develop this a more of a peer-like relationship with this human being that you were involved in helping to shape to come there. There's extraordinary reward in that also. So, and I have to hope that that continues as we get older.
I love it. I love it. I think those are that's a priceless perspective, Adiel. It is golden, because we did a podcast once on the fairy dust in the tantrums, because we have tantrums at all ages, but his needs and his volatility are so different when children are little than when they have, you know, more reasonableness to discuss and problem solve with. So let's get Laura back in with how you manage that inner peace and the collective peace of your family, for example.
I think a thread that I'm hearing a lot is connection through what we're saying. And I think that can be independent of age. So if you're sitting in a moment where there's a lot happening and the child is bouncing, but then in a moment you see that smile, or the child says something that lights you up or lights, and you look into their eyes, and all of a sudden you see one another, and it's like, boom, pow, there can come that peaceful moment. And so what I have learned over time through some really powerful spiritual teachers who have guided my path is, in each moment, I guess, as we were talking about young children, but then when you go along the path, as Rabbi was speaking, you have a child, let's say that's older, and you can have that type of relationship. Then where I think it goes is looking at highest good, looking at what is it in each moment when potentially there could be a conflict. Is it the most important right now that I'm getting what I want or what I think I need in that exact moment? Or is it that I'm putting first whatever it is that's happening in that moment, and I'm making that highest good the most important? And so what I've found is that I can actually do some strategies that would take me to be able to get out of myself for my own specific, like, very narrow focus. And if I just stop for a moment of tension and I take some really deep breaths, and I just, like, truly will just even place my hand upon my heart and close my eyes and slow down my breathing, independent if I have children around. I do this with children. I have songs that that I share with children to teach them how to do it. Like, take a really deep breath and now blow it out. And you can do this with people of all ages. And lifting the breath, coming back to connection with God and connection with that highest good. Walking outside, putting my feet in the grass, looking up at the clouds, noticing the different formations, and just being with. I've noticed that even when you walk outside with children, there's a different energy, there's a different feeling that can come out of those moments. And the shift or a transition, if there is a moment of tension, moving the space or going and just being with nature, it can give an opportunity to come back to center.
Breath, ground, and of course water, you know, and even if it just means putting them in a bathtub. Yes, Rabbi.
I was just thinking about it now in relation, as Laura spoke, in relation to strategies when dealing with tense times and difficult times. And certainly, I think one of them does have to do with the boundaries that we set. I'm not talking about the boundaries we set on the behavior of our children, but our own boundaries, and where we define ourselves as beginning and ending, and being able to see the child not merely as an extension of us, as a part of us, but as a separate being. And so I think it enables us then to respond in a more respectful way to ourselves and to the child. You know, like, as opposed to feeling this is the fact that my kid's throwing a tantrum is a reflection of me and it makes me all uncomfortable, I'm okay. Let's deal with the tantrum in a way that's appropriate. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that the way we respond or react in any situation really begins deep inside of ourselves. So I'm a meditator. And so the fact that I meditate enables me to get into conflictual situations with, I feel like, with a great advantage over everybody else that's yelling at each other. So it's created, so there's some kind of, you enter into this with a sense of inner peace, and that's kind of where it has to begin. Yeah.
Which takes me back to Adiel's moment of that solitary moment that you love to have every day. Do you get those every day?
Every night, pretty much.
Often
Yeah,
enough.
I stay up to ungodly hours sometimes just thinking about things. And my wife's like, "What time did you get in bed last night?" And I'm like, 2 o'clock. She's like, "No, it was later than that."
And
So
I think that's true for a lot of parents, who just give up sleep in order to have some time for themselves.
I just find that I'm spread so thin during the day, and the nature of my business right now, and there's always decisions. I'm not the best. I was never the best decision maker growing up. I would deliberate, and even after I made a decision, I would deliberate more, even though the decision was already made.
Yeah.
And I'm in a business where I'm like constantly having to make big decisions, which has made me a much better decision maker, I think. But it's still a lot to think about, and I need like time and space and quiet to be able to think about that and strategize. And it's really the only time that I can get that unencumbered time.
I think that self-awareness becomes such a critical aspect of every parent and every person's piece, because it's like Rabbi and those bodies bumping into each other in the sky. I mean, that is our reality, is that we're going to be bumping up against one another's needs and perspectives, and we have to start with ourselves. But it's hard for the parents, or especially that believe they don't have a moment to be able to step back. Laura can walk out, and I can see Laura, taking that moment to go outside and say, I'm going to put my feet in the grass, and
I have to say that's not during the week most of the time. It's well, I try to during the week, but it doesn't happen very often. But on Shabbos, I really do try to create a different energy. And I think that it's only been the last few years that I've been making a drastic difference in my week. And when Shabbos comes, because I lead service, it's funny for clergy or service leaders, Shabbos is really sometimes your most day of work. But what I've been doing for the past 2 years is, right after leading services, I go outside and I completely put down my phone, and I either go to the beach or the park or sit by the lake, and I go with my partner, my daughter, and we really make at least a couple of hours on Shabbos different than the rest of the week. And then going into Havdalah, there's that actual mindfulness of, okay, now what does this energy feel like after that breath, and how can we bring it into the week that's upcoming, and just closing your eyes for a moment and cherishing that feeling and seeing what it feels like and seeing how you can actually transition into the other spaces. Obviously, that's harder when you have children under the age of 2, and I've experienced that.
you also have a teenager, so you get equal status to stress. But I love, and let's close on this. Go ahead, Adiel.
No, I think just talking about nature, I just think that, seeing certain things in nature just really puts everything into perspective. And I think it really grounds us to realize, for me, it's like to be in the mountains and, with running water and waterfalls. To me, that's like, I want to be able to live around that. Like when I go to places that have mountains and that sort of terrain, it's like, and I come back here to Boca and I'm like, oh God, like, what am I doing? And I think that there's a beauty to raising children and living in that sort of environment. I feel like, I mean, and I could just be saying this because it's not what I'm used to, and so it's like a grass is greener type thing, but I think that there's a power in that, and the power in mountains, and there's something about it, and it's really like, it's magical, and it's unfortunately we don't have that here.
I
But
agree. Go ahead. I didn't mean to. So it's, and in wrap up, I feel like my struggle is always, if I don't have the inner peace, well, no, I'm not, I don't know if anyway, but it's this idea that I can create peace, that I can. And so whether it's finding something in Laura's Shabbat, but it has to be that intentional, deliberate action that I'm going to pull it into the week. And Adiel's mountain, I have to bring that experience, or that calm, or that magicalness that I feel there, back to Boca. It's like we have to work at this a little bit. So let's just close with final thoughts of creating peace for ourselves and for others. Laura, please.
For me, I would absolutely need to close with the idea that I feel the most at peace when I feel connected to God, and when I feel that my path, or that I'm opening to God and to life unfolding in each moment the way that it's unfolding, because I can't happening. It's all happening right in front of me. I can only be with what is. And so when I open to that type of divine flow, I find that my whole being shifts, and any anxiety or fear or sadness or anything that I'm personally experiencing in self, if I give it out, like put it in the God box, then it's the opportunity to open and to be.
And Adiel, you're going forward to a new baby arriving. And I know, when I see you as a father, that you are bringing peace, comfort, safety, nurturing to Jasper and to your family. So I know, in some ways, the groundswell of peace that you bring is big. How you feeling going forward to the next set of demands that might be placed on you? Rabbi's shaking his head.
it feels, obviously there's a lot of unknown. I know that I sort of can sense that it's going to be intense. I feel like I finally gotten to a point sort of where things have sort of like, we've got it figured out, and now we're going to shake the whole thing up. I think, I should be a meditator, like what Rabbi Steinhardt said, because I think it's super important that to be able to keep emotion and judgment sort of separate, and to be able to approach situations and not, and I say this as somebody who is not really able to do this a lot of the time, even though I know I need to be better at it. But I think it's really important to, and it's hard for people that are passionate about things and loving people, but I think it's really important to sort of separate emotion and decision making and the way you approach situations, and to really try to approach situations as calmly as possible, and just try to solve problems and just learn from them and move on, and hopefully it makes you better at doing it the next time, and then you just continue to get better at doing everything, and hopefully you get back to that equilibrium, although maybe we never do, but what we think is equilibrium. I have a question though for Rabbi Steinhardt. The whole idea about the angels and people in heaven, what controls them or enables them to not bump into each other and to be in harmony with each other?
Yeah, teaching wasn't about angels. It was about heavenly bodies, that being planets, suns, moons,
Oh,
everything out there. So gravity.
okay.
It's an issue of, no, it's an issue of the order of the universe. really, universal order, which is built into God's creation.
Okay.
So my closing comment is, do you know what a Jew is? It's a Buddhist, it's a Jew
Jewish Buddhist.
who starts out as being Jewish and then found Buddhism along the way. And there was a whole big movement of Jewish Buddhists in the late 60s, early 70s. And one of the most famous is a guy who went by a Buddhist name, Ram Dass, and he wrote a book entitled Be Here Now. And so I think one of the things that connects all of this, both what Adi was saying in terms of being able to separate, like emotion from what you're thinking, reactivity, all of reaction, and even what Laura was saying about how she centers herself with time and with, a sense of a universal presence of God. The Be Here Now speaks about the fact that we have to have the capacity to separate what it means to be in this moment from what was and what will be. And that I think that kind of unifies a lot of this, and that is the capacity to be present in any moment. And therefore, there we can look at ourselves and see where we're being reactive or overly reactive, where we're losing touch, where we're becoming too, argumentative, where we're becoming too worried, etc. We just have now. This is it.
Thank you. Thank you all. And of course, we wish you all peace and all of our listeners peace. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for being here and sharing all of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It was nice to be talking.